Hey everyone, this week we are talking about connecting with your audience. Now, how you do that and what way you connect with your audience largely depends on who your audience is. Now, we've talked about identifying your audience, we've talked about various tools that social media gives you and puts at your disposal. But how do you reach out? And what form does connecting with your audience take? And more importantly, how can you create a dynamic in which, in some cases, your client, which is intrinsically a non-personal, in most cases, entity, a business, an industry, how can you take an entity like that and create a personality that will connect with your audience, that will interact with, or that even can interact with your audience? So I've discussed this a bit in the introduction of this week, giving you some thoughts to think about, like Old Spice and Dove, Procter and Gamble in general. But you can think about some of the industries or some of the corporations out there that have essentially personified themselves and created corporate spokes, mascots even, that have created personalities around their brands. Like, for example, Flo from Progressive, who is a personification of that particular brand. This gives them the ability to interact with their consumers in a more personal manner. Extend that onto social media, and you can see how we can start creating dialogues. Now, in Chapter 6, the book will start talking to you about how you can extend this process, how you can perhaps take your client's business and start thinking about how to create this dialogue between your consumers. Now, this is important, a dialogue, not a monologue. Social media's real strength is having that back and forth transactional communication. A lot of the times what social media strategists do wrong in the beginning is they want to take their message and just make it a one-way street. I'm just going to give you offers, throw incentives, tell you information, and I'm just throwing information at you. Chapter 6 talks about how to facilitate a more give and take relationship. So pay attention to that. Chapter 7 and 8 actually talk about something that's a little bit uncomfortable for a lot of strategists, which is how to deal with both good comments, as well as bad comments. When people use that transactional communication model to send some negative feedback our way, how do we deal with that? Do we ignore it? Do we delete those comments? Or do we sometimes leverage that to create a more authentic experience? So Chapter 7 and 8 are both very valuable to understanding how to properly and effectively use the transactional experience that social media gives us, as strategists. So pay attention to that. I've given you a video that's called Steal Like an Artist, that basically talks about how important it is to look at what other people are doing and then how to effectively pull pieces out and use them yourself. You're not always going to be able to mirror or copy other people, but you can always take a look at what other folks are doing and pull things out. That being said, I've also given you examples of how a couple of universities have created conversations with their consumers, particularly their students. University of Idaho, again, and Baylor are a couple of examples, and I've linked to a few others. Once again, you do have Facebook courses I'd like you to complete and drop them in, and I've given you an example of a company that has done a fantastic job of creating a bit of a sassy personality for itself in Wendy's. So I might take a look at that conclusion of this week. Take a look at all of this, consider the points that are made, and I will see you in week 5.